What's going on, guys? Back at it again with another companion build here for you guys on the channel. As you guys can see right in front of you, this one is on the wonderful Ember. She is a fantastic companion, and as you guys will see in her passives, she ends up being one of the best DPS companions that you could potentially have for you guys to run around with on your little adventures. Very excited to jump into this one, guys. I wanted to get started on these High Isle companions a lot sooner. However, as I said in my Isabel video, I ended up getting very sick to the extent of hospitalization. I ended up needing surgery, so I needed to get a little bit of time off so that I can heal. And I'm feeling a lot better now, so here we are with our first companion build. If you guys are excited for this one though, guys, do me a huge favor, drop a like on this video. Also subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, because it really does help this channel grow. So with that being said, let's see what she's got to offer. Alright guys, so in the number 1 bar slot, we have Crystal Blast. Crystal Blast reads as Ember conjures dark crystals to bombard an enemy, dealing 10,626 magic damage. So, plain and simple, this is a very straightforward, ability. This is her crystal ability where she just launches a crystal ball essentially at an enemy, dealing 10,626 damage. Very simple ability, but it does pack a very good punch. And the best part about this skill is the fact that the cooldown is only 8 seconds. So because of that, she will be using this skill quite frequently, therefore increasing the DPS, therefore making her hit very powerful hits with this specific skill, but her skill sets in general. Moving on, Hurricane Visage. Hurricane Visage manifests, Ember manifests themselves in pure lightning, zapping nearby enemies with electricity, dealing 5,310 shock damage over 8 seconds. While in this form, their damage taken is reduced by 20%. So this skill, flat out, right off the bat, helps with her survivability. With the ability, with the fact that she is able to take 20% less damage taken from enemies, is just going to help her survive for that much longer. I think this is a must for pretty much every single type of build. Maybe not so much as a healer, but as a DPS and as a tank especially, this is a skill that I highly recommend to have slotted, because it really does help the survivability of your companion. But not only does it reduce damage taken by 20%, it also deals shock damage over 8 seconds of 5,310 shock damage. It is a great skill overall, so every enemy that's around her vicinity is going to be doing, she's going to be doing damage to them all the way around. Sharded Wards. Ember conjures, I didn't say this either, but the cooldown is at an average of 12 seconds, which also helps with the recommendation of this skill. Sharded Wards. Ember conjures wards made of energy for protection, granting a damage shield for them and their nearby allies that absorbs 4,350 damage for 6 seconds. Targets affected by the shield are also healed for 4,347 health over 8 seconds. So this skill, right off the bat, is another skill to have for her survivability, right? It gives her the ability to have a damage shield that admittingly isn't a huge number, but it does help in her survivability because it gives her damage shield of 4,350. Not only that, but the targets affected by the shield itself are also healed by 4,347 over the duration of 8 seconds. So this ends up being a great skill to have slotted, again, for survivability purposes, which for a DPS companion, it is imperative, because companions in the DPS department tend to be pretty squishy, especially the up close and personal ones like daggers and stuff like that, they ended up being pretty squishy. So having some sort of survivability really does help a lot. Shocking Burst. Ember creates a nexus of storm energy at a target location, instantly dealing 5,313 shock damage to all enemies in the area and an additional 5,968 shock damage over 8 seconds. So this is one of those skills that I like to have on my companions for 2 reasons. One, not only does it do an initial 5,312 shock damage, but it also, on top of that, adds a damage over time of an additional 5,967 damage. So this ends up increasing her overall DPS because not just the initial attack that it does, but also the damage over time. And the best part about this is that it does have an average cooldown rate of 12 seconds, so it does have the ability of being kept up quite often, and more often than not, as a matter of fact. So this ends up being, again, a great skill to have on pretty much all your DPS builds because of its practicality, and it does a pretty good amount of damage overall as well. So I do recommend having this slotted. The next skill, Thunderstrike, I will give you a flex option for this. This is a flex spot. If you're going to be doing like trash mobs, which is what I mainly use Ember for, if I'm being completely honest, because of her ultimate, which we will get on in a second, I tend to keep Thunderstrike as a finisher slotted. But if you're going to be fighting a boss, which is what we're going to be doing in this video, I recommend having some sort of a damage over time, which I'll show you what that flex spot will be. But if you're going to be fighting trash mobs, this is the skill that I recommend having on this, which is Thunderstrike. Ember calls down an explosion of lightning to finish off an enemy, dealing 31,878 shock damage and an additional 10,626 shock damage to other nearby enemies, used when the enemy is below 25% health. The cooldown is at 16 seconds, so it's a little bit slightly higher than average, but it's still a ton of damage that she does. 31,878 shock damage and an additional 10,626 over to nearby enemies is a lot of damage, and therefore I think it's a good skill to have for trash mobs because it not only deals damage to an initial enemy, finishing them off, but it also does damage to enemies around them by 10,626 damage. So it ends up being a pretty okay, ability to have for trash mobs. But if you're going to be fighting a boss, I don't recommend it having this because bosses tend to have a ton of damage, especially if you're riding solo. It could take a while before she starts utilizing this ability, therefore decreasing your DPS for the first 75% of the boss encounter, but on the bottom end of the last 25% health of the enemy, of the boss, she will be doing a ton of damage. So it's a very inconsistent basis. If you want something more consistent, I recommend going into your destruction staff and actually slotting Elemental Blockade, which Elemental Blockade slams their staff down to create an elemental wall in front of them, dealing 10,611 magic damage over 8 seconds, with the cooldown of being 8 seconds, so she will be effectively keeping this up 100% of the time, dealing consistent damage over time, therefore increasing her DPS throughout the longevity of the fight. So if you want to see more consistent damage, which is what I'm going to have slotted for a boss fight, since that's what we're going to be doing here in this video, I recommend this one over the other one. But if you're going to be fighting trash mobs, I do recommend that other skill. Last but not least, on the other hand, is her ultimate, and that is Raging Storm. Ember creates a thunderstorm that follows the target, striking all enemies within for 1,992 shock damage every 1 second for 8 seconds. The final strike deals 300% additional damage to enemies under 25% health. This skill, I have to say, is fantastic for trash mobs because it creates a pretty massive AoE storm that effectively does damage to every enemy within. It does attach itself to one enemy, and when that enemy dies, it just kind of just hovers there. But every enemy caught inside the storm is consistently getting ticks of damage over and over and over until the ultimate is of course over. But the enemy struck that's under 25% health gets struck with an additional 300% damage on top of that. So it doesn't do a ton of damage like say Bastion's ultimate, or even Isabel's, or hell, even Miri's does a lot of damage. This is probably on the lower end in terms of initial massive damage, but what this does is that it's able to take down a lot of enemies at any given point. Therefore, I think making Ember the companion to have with you if you're going to be running around dealing with trash mobs. This ultimate is fantastic for that, at least in my experience. Moving on to the gear, on the other hand, I like to emulate my companion builds in the same fashion that I build my own characters. And that by that I mean I like to have 2 5-piece sets and a 2-piece set that simulates a monster set. We don't have monster sets on companion, so I just like to go with a 2-piece. Starting off with a 2-piece is the head and shoulders, which we have gone with aggressive. Aggressive increases damage done by 1.7%. And that goes for the head and shoulders, of course, because that is the 2-piece we chose to go for. In terms of the 5-piece body set, our first 5-piece set, we have also gone with aggressive, which again deals an additional, increases the damage done by an additional 1.7% per piece done. So all 7 pieces on the body will be increasing that much more damage. In terms of the jewelry and the weapon, we went with Focus, which increases the critical strike rating by 569 for the jewelry, and since the weapon is considered a 2-piece, it increases it by 1,138. So she does deal a lot in the critical department, but as far as her racial skills, she has a fantastic racial passive that really makes her a very good companion to have in terms of damage, and that is because she increased her, it's called Cunning, but it increases the critical chance by 3% and damage done by an additional 3%. So having the critical chance increased by 3% with the critical strike rating increased by all of this, it ends up being pretty powerful to say the least. Let's go on over to the house and check out her fashion. So when it comes to Ember, her fashion is very simple and straightforward. I went with the Queen's Eye costume, the Queen's Eye Spy Master costume, which I believe is Raz's outfit, if I'm not mistaken. But it is a crown shop item nonetheless. In terms of dyes, the only thing I have is Shriek Blue or Shrike Blue for the middle slot, and the rest is left by itself. I think this looks absolutely fantastic. In terms of her weapon, it's just Khajiit Staff 4 with, again, just the Shrike Blue on the final slot. And that's basically her appearance. Let me know down in the comments section what you guys think of her appearance. With that being said, let's see if we can go find a world boss to solo. And there you have it, guys. Ember is a fantastic companion. She has a well-rounded arsenal of skills in her tool set. She is absolutely fantastic. Deals a lot of, power in her punch, if you will. And not only that, but thematically speaking, she's also great and fantastic. That's why this build ends up being one of my favorites that I've played around with so far. If you guys enjoyed it though, do me a huge favor, drop a like on this video. Also subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, because it really does help this channel grow. So with that being said, catch you guys in the next one. Deuces.